The galaxy had learned to fear humans over 200 years of contact. It started with the first encounter near the Epsilon trade routes. A group of pirates attacked a human cargo ship. Expecting an easy target, they were wrong. The humans fought back with such violence and determination that only one pirate vessel escaped to tell the story. That story spread quickly. Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship, the Valiant, and watched the stars move past. He had served in the Earth Defense Fleet for 15 years. In that time, he had fought in 12 major battles and countless smaller fights. He was tired, but he was good at his job. "Commander, we're approaching the frontier station," said Lieutenant Sophie Turner from her position at the tactical console. She was young, only 26, but she had already earned 3 medals for bravery. Her fingers moved quickly across the controls as she monitored the surrounding space for threats. Jake nodded. "Good. Let's hope this is a quiet supply run." The Valiant was a heavy cruiser, one of 75 in the Earth Defense Fleet. It carried enough weapons to destroy a small moon and shields that could withstand direct hits from most alien weapons. By human standards, it was just an average military ship, nothing special. But to the rest of the galaxy, it was a nightmare. As they approached the station, Sophie noticed something on her sensors. "Sir, there's a Kryn merchant ship changing course. They're moving away from us." Jake smiled without humor. "Let me guess. They detected us and decided to leave early." "Yes, sir. They were supposed to dock for another 6 hours according to the station logs. This happened all the time. Alien ships would change their routes, delay their schedules, or simply run away when human vessels appeared. The reputation of humanity had grown so large that even peaceful encounters made other species nervous. The Valiant docked at Frontier Station without incident. Jake and Sophie took a shuttle down to the main commercial area to meet with the station commander. As they walked through the crowded marketplace, aliens of every species moved out of their way. Conversations stopped. Eyes followed them with fear and suspicion. A Drellian merchant, brave or foolish enough to approach them, bowed low. "Honored humans. Please, I mean no disrespect. Would you consider my goods? I have the finest fabrics from 3 systems." Jake stopped and looked at the merchant's stall. The fabrics were indeed beautiful, shimmering with colors that shifted in the light. "How much for the blue one?" The merchant's 4 eyes widened. "For you, honored human, 50 credits. A fair price. I swear on my family name." Sophie checked her datapad quickly and whispered to Jake. "Sir, the average price for that fabric is 200 credits. He's practically giving it away." Jake sighed. This was another common problem. Aliens were so afraid of humans that they often refused to charge fair prices, worried that humans might react violently to normal business negotiations. It made simple shopping difficult. "I'll give you 150 credits, Jake said firmly. "That's the fair market price. I won't take advantage of you." The merchant looked confused, then grateful. "You are most honorable, human. Thank you." After completing their business at the station, Jake and Sophie returned to the Valiant. In his quarters, Jake opened a secure message from Earth Defense Command. Admiral Gregory Palmer wanted to speak with him directly. The Admiral's face appeared on the screen. He was an older man, with gray hair and sharp eyes that had seen too many wars. "Commander Morrison, I have a new assignment for you." "Sir, the Valiant is due for maintenance. We've been on patrol for 8 months. "I know, Commander, but something is happening. Our intelligence has detected unusual military movements near the Velcron border. Large fleet formations, supply convoys, all the signs of preparation for a major offensive." Jake felt his stomach tighten. The Velcron Dominion was one of the most powerful empires in the galaxy. They controlled over 200 systems and had a military force 10 times larger than Earth's. If they decided to attack human space, it would be a disaster. "Are we going to war, sir?" Palmer was quiet for a moment. "I don't know yet. But I want you to take the Valiant and 3 other ships to patrol the border sectors. Watch. Report. Don't engage unless absolutely necessary. Understood, sir. The Admiral's expression changed slightly. Jake, there's something else. Something you need to know. If the Velcron do attack, the response won't come from ships like yours. Sir, Earth Defense Command has other resources. Resources that most people don't know about. If war comes, you'll see things that will surprise you. Just trust the command structure and follow your orders. Can you do that? Jake frowned. Of course, sir. But I don't understand. You will. Palmer out. The screen went dark. Jake sat in silence for several minutes, thinking about the Admiral's strange words. What resources? What kind of response was he talking about? The Earth Defense Fleet was humanity's military force. What else could there be? Sophie's voice came over the intercom. Commander, we've received orders to rendezvous with 3 other ships. The Defender, the Guardian, and the Sentinel. We're being assigned to border patrol duty. I know, Jake said. Prepare the crew for departure. We leave in 2 hours. As the Valiant moved away from Frontier Station and headed toward the Velcron border, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that something big was about to happen. The galaxy feared humanity because of soldiers like him, because of ships like the Valiant, because of the countless battles where humans had proven they would never surrender, never back down, never accept defeat. But Admiral Palmer's words suggested that the galaxy's fear was based on incomplete information. There was something else. Something hidden. Something that made the regular military look like just the beginning. Jake had spent his entire adult life in the military. He had fought and bled for Earth. He had lost friends in battle. He thought he knew everything about humanity's military capabilities. Now he was beginning to realize that he might be wrong. The stars stretched out before the Valiant as it accelerated toward the border. Behind them, on Earth, in a facility buried deep underground, other humans were already at work. They weren't soldiers. They didn't carry weapons. They didn't fly ships or lead troops into battle. But they were about to change everything. The Velcron Dominion had been planning their invasion for 3 years. High Commander Zalth stood in his war room, looking at the massive display showing all of human space. It looked small, vulnerable. 12 systems, 43 colonies, 1 homeworld. The humans were spread thin, their forces scattered across too much territory. They have 75 heavy cruisers, his intelligence officer reported. 200 smaller vessels, 15 orbital defense platforms around Earth. Their total military force is approximately 300,000 soldiers. Zalth's mandibles clicked together in satisfaction. And we have 300 heavy warships, 800 support vessels, 2 million soldiers ready for deployment. Then we will crush them easily. Zalth turned to his senior commanders. The humans have a reputation for being dangerous. Yes. But reputation is not the same as strength. They fight hard because they are desperate. They have no choice. We will give them a choice. Surrender or die. The Velcron fleet began moving toward human space. They traveled in 3 groups, each one powerful enough to destroy any human defense it encountered. Zalth commanded the Central Fleet personally, heading straight for the human colony of Nuestra, the largest settlement outside of Earth itself. 3 days into the invasion, Admiral Gregory Palmer sat in his office at Earth Defense Command. The reports were clear. The Velcron were coming. They would reach Nuestra in 72 hours. He didn't look worried. Instead, he picked up his secure communicator and entered a code that only 5 people in the entire military knew. The screen flickered and showed a woman in a plain gray uniform, Colonel Lisa Bennett. They're moving, Palmer said. Lisa nodded. She was sitting in a large room filled with computers and displays. Around her, Lisa, dozens of people worked quietly at their stations. We've been tracking them since they left their home systems. Everything is proceeding As expected. You're sure about this? If your plan fails, we lose everything. The plan won't fail, Admiral. We've run the scenarios 8,000 times. We know every possible move they can make. We know how they think. We know what they want. And we know exactly how to give them what they think they want while taking everything they actually need. Palmer trusted Lisa. He had worked with her for 10 years, ever since she had been recruited into the Strategic Planning Division. The division was humanity's greatest secret, a group of the smartest people Earth had ever produced, all working together to solve one problem: how to survive in a galaxy full of enemies. Execute Phase 1, Palmer ordered. Lisa turned to her team. Begin operations. Nathan, start the communications interference. Claire, activate the economic protocols. Everyone else, you know your jobs. Nathan Cole was a communications expert. He had spent 5 years learning every detail of Velcron military communication systems. Now, he sat at his console and began to work. He didn't try to break their encryption. That would be too obvious. Instead, he did something much more subtle. He added tiny delays to their messages. A few seconds here. A minute there. Nothing that would seem like enemy action. Just enough to make coordination difficult. Claire Martinez handled the economic warfare. She had a doctorate in economics and had spent 3 years studying Velcron trade patterns. Now she began sending carefully crafted messages to banks, trading companies, and resource suppliers throughout neutral space. Nothing illegal. Nothing that violated any treaties. Just business deals, contracts, purchases. But each one was designed to drive up the prices of things the Velcron needed for their war. At Deep Site 7, 3 kilometers under the Rocky Mountains, Lisa watched as her plan began to unfold. This facility had been built over 20 years, carved out of solid rock and hidden from every sensor in existence. It was home to the Strategic Planning Division, and it was the real heart of human military power. Meanwhile, Commander Jake Morrison and his small fleet reached the border and encountered the first Velcron forces. 3 enemy cruisers appeared on his sensors. Shields up, weapons ready, Jake ordered. But do not fire unless they fire first. Sophie looked at him with confusion. Sir, there are only 3 of them. We have 4 ships. We could win this fight. Our orders are to observe and report, not to engage. The Velcron ships moved closer. They were clearly expecting a fight. Human ships never back down. Everyone knew that. But the Valiant and its 3 companion ships just watched. They kept their shields up and their weapons powered, but they didn't attack. After 10 minutes of tense waiting, the Velcron ships moved away. They seemed confused by the human behavior. Sir, why didn't we fight? Sophie asked after the enemy ships left. Because someone higher up the chain has a bigger plan. We're just pieces on the board, Lieutenant. We do our part and trust that the people moving the pieces know what they're doing. The next day, the Velcron fleet reached Nuestra. High Commander Zalth expected fierce resistance. He expected the humans to fight for every meter of space. He expected casualties. What he got was something completely different. The Nuestra Defense Force consisted of 6 cruisers and 2 orbital platforms. They fired a few shots at long range, then retreated. The entire defense collapsed in less than an hour. The colony surrendered without a real fight. Zalth was suspicious. This is too easy. Where are their reinforcements? There are no reinforcements coming, Commander, his tactical officer reported. Our sensors show no human fleet movements in this sector. What about their other colonies? We've received reports from the northern and southern fleets. They encountered minimal resistance. 3 more colonies have fallen. The humans are retreating everywhere. Zalth couldn't understand it. The humans were supposed to be fierce warriors. They were supposed to fight to the death, but they were running away like cowards. Perhaps their reputation was exaggerated, suggested one of his officers. Perhaps, Zalth agreed. But something felt wrong. Back on Earth, Lisa Bennett watched the reports with satisfaction. Beautifully. The Velcron commanders are getting their orders an average of 90 seconds late. It's not enough to make them suspicious, but it's enough to slow down their coordination. They're making small mistakes in their fleet movements. Good. Claire. What's the economic situation? The price of titanium has increased by 40% in the last 3 days. Fuel costs are up 32%. Food prices for Velcron military rations have doubled. Their war is costing them 3 times more than they planned. Lisa smiled. And they still think they're winning. This is going exactly according to plan. At Deep Site 7, a man named Aaron Cross was working on the diplomatic angle. He was contacting every neutral government in the sector, sharing carefully edited information about the Velcron invasion. He made sure everyone knew that the Velcron had attacked without provocation. He provided evidence of Velcron atrocities in occupied territories. He suggested that if the Velcron could attack humanity so easily, maybe other small civilizations were also at risk. Slowly, public opinion in the galaxy began to turn against the Velcron. Trade agreements were quietly reconsidered. Diplomatic meetings were postponed. Nothing dramatic. Nothing that looked like a coordinated response. Just a slow cooling of relations between the Velcron and everyone else. Another team member, Megan Cole, was handling psychological operations. She had studied Velcron culture and psychology for 6 years. Now she was feeding false intelligence reports into their networks. Reports that made different Velcron commanders suspicious of each other. Reports that suggested supply problems that didn't actually exist. Reports that made victory seem just slightly further away than it actually was. At the end of the first week of the invasion, High Commander Zolth sat in his quarters and reviewed the situation. His fleet had captured 8 human colonies. Human forces were in full retreat. By all objective measures, the invasion was a complete success. So why did he feel so uneasy? Captain Ryan Hughes sat in his ship and watched the Velcron supply convoy pass below him. His vessel was small, designed for stealth and reconnaissance, not combat. It had cost more to build than 3 regular cruisers, but it was worth every credit. No sensor in the galaxy could detect it when it was running silent. Ryan had been following Velcron supply lines for 2 weeks now. He never attacked. He never revealed his presence. He just watched and recorded everything, sending detailed reports back to Deep Site 7 every 6 hours. Another convoy heading to Sector 7, he said into his recorder. 12 transport ships, 4 escorts, carrying what looks like fuel cells and ammunition. They're using Route Charlie 9, just like the previous 3 convoys. They're predictable. Too predictable. Back at Deep Site 7, Lisa Bennett received Ryan's report and smiled. The Velcron were creatures of habit. They liked order and routine. They used the same routes, the same schedules, the same procedures. It made them efficient. It also made them vulnerable. Nathan, I need you to do something for me, Lisa said. The next time a Velcron supply convoy uses Route Charlie 9, I want you to send a fake distress signal from that sector. Make it look like it's coming from a neutral trading ship. Nathan nodded. Easy. When do you want it sent? Nodded. Easy. When do you want it sent? Wait until the convoy is exactly halfway through the route. Then send the signal. Let's see what they do. 3 days later, a Velcron supply convoy entered Route Charlie 9. Exactly at the halfway point, their sensors picked up a distress signal. A Drellian merchant ship was reporting engine failure and requesting assistance. The convoy commander faced a choice. His orders were to deliver supplies as quickly as possible. But galactic law required all vessels to respond to distress signals. If he ignored it and someone found out, it could create diplomatic problems. He decided to help. 2 of his escorts broke away from the convoy to investigate the distress signal. It took them 40 minutes to reach the location, and they found nothing. No ship. No debris, no sign that anything had ever been there. By the time they returned to the convoy, The delivery schedule was ruined. The supplies arrived 6 hours late. Lisa Bennett made a note in her files. The Velcron would respond to distress signals, even during wartime. Good to know. At the same time, Commander Chris Andrews was working on a completely different kind of operation. He was on Theros Station, a major trading hub that served as neutral ground for dozens of species. Chris wasn't a soldier. He had spent 15 years working in finance before the Strategic Planning Division recruited him. Now he sat in a comfortable office, wearing expensive civilian clothes, and made business deals. He represented a company that officially had nothing to do with Earth's government. He bought and sold goods like any other trader, except every transaction he made was designed to hurt the Velcron war effort. "Mr. Andrews, it's good to see you again," said Kelvin Marsh, another human trader who worked for the same secret organization. Kelvin looked like a typical businessman, slightly overweight, always smiling, always ready to make a deal. "Kelvin, what do you have for me?" "The Velcron are looking to buy medical supplies, lots of them. Apparently, they're having issues with disease outbreaks in their occupied territories. Poor sanitation, overcrowding, you know how it goes." Chris nodded. "And I've already bought up 60% of the available medical supplies in this sector, not just from Theros Station, from 6 other trading hubs as well. All legal purchases, all at fair market prices. What will you do with them?" "Sell them. Eventually. But not to the Velcron. And not for at least 3 months. By then, the prices will be much higher, and the Velcron will be desperate." Chris smiled. "Excellent work. What else?" "The Velcron war bonds are starting to fail. They've been trying to raise money to fund the war, but investors are getting nervous. I may have helped spread some rumors about Velcron economic instability." "May have?" Kelvin's smile grew wider. "Okay. I definitely helped. I paid 3 respected economic analysts to publish reports questioning the Velcron Dominion's financial situation. All legitimate analysis, all based on real data, but presented in a way that makes investors nervous. This was the kind of war that most species didn't understand. There were no explosions, no heroes, no dramatic battles, just patient, careful manipulation of systems and resources. It was boring, it was slow, but it was incredibly effective. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Nina Foster was running a different kind of operation from Deep Site 7. She was a psychological warfare specialist, and her job was to break the Velcron military's trust in its own command structure. Nina had created 53 fake intelligence reports over the past 3 weeks. Each report was carefully crafted to look authentic. Each one contained information that was mostly true, mixed with small lies, designed to create confusion and paranoia. She sent these reports through compromised communication channels, making it look like they came from legitimate Velcron intelligence sources. Some reports suggested that certain commanders were secretly planning to betray the Dominion. Other reports claimed that supply officers were stealing resources. Still others hinted at secret peace negotiations that didn't actually exist. The key was subtlety. If the lies were too big, they would be discovered and dismissed. But small lies, mixed with truth, were much harder to detect. High Commander Zalth was starting to feel the effects of this campaign. He had received 3 different intelligence reports in the past week, all contradicting each other. One claimed that the humans were preparing a massive counterattack. Another said the humans were about to surrender. A third suggested that neutral powers were planning to intervene on humanity's behalf. He didn't know which reports to trust anymore. "Get me a direct communication line with the Northern Fleet Commander," Zalth ordered. His communication officer worked at the console for several minutes. "Sir, there's some kind of interference. I can establish the connection, but there's a significant delay." "How significant?" "Approximately 2 minutes, sir." Zalth slammed his fist on the console. 2 minutes? That's unacceptable. How am I supposed to coordinate 3 fleets with 2-minute delays? "I don't know, sir. The technicians say it's something to do with solar radiation in this sector. It's affecting all long-range communications." It wasn't solar radiation. It was Nathan Cole, sitting at his console at Deep Site 7, carefully manipulating Velcron communication systems in ways that were almost impossible to detect. Back on the border, Commander Jake Morrison was still patrolling with his small fleet. They had encountered Velcron forces 6 more times in the past 2 weeks. Each time, Jake followed his orders. He observed. He reported. He didn't fight unless absolutely necessary. It was driving his crew crazy. "Sir, I don't understand what we're doing," Sophie said during a private meeting in Jake's quarters. "We're just running away from every fight. The crew thinks we're cowards." "I know," Jake said. "But we have our orders. What's the point? We've lost 8 colonies. Thousands of people are under Velcron occupation, and we're just watching it happen." Jake stood and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. "Lieutenant, I've been thinking about what Admiral Palmer said. About other resources. About a different kind of response." "What do you mean?" "I think there's a plan. A bigger plan. And I think we're not supposed to fight because someone wants the Velcron to think they're winning." Sophie frowned. "That seems like a dangerous strategy." "It is. But think about it. Every report we send goes directly to Strategic Command. They're getting real-time intelligence on Velcron fleet movements, tactics, supply lines, everything. We're not fighting. We're gathering information. For what purpose? I don't know yet. But I trust Admiral Palmer, and I think we're about to see why. He told me to be ready for surprises." Sophie was quiet for a moment. "I hope you're right, sir. Because right now, it looks like we're losing this war." "Rum. 1. I. Rum." Jake nodded. "I know. But sometimes you have to look like you're losing in order to win." At Deep Site 7, Lisa Bennett was reviewing the progress of all operations. Communications, disruption, working perfectly, economic warfare, exceeding expectations, psychological operations, Velcron command structure showing signs of stress, intelligence gathering, complete picture of enemy capabilities established. "How long until Phase 2? Asked Admiral Palmer over the secure channel. "Another week," Lisa replied. "We need to let them get a little more confident, a little more committed, a little more dependent on supply lines that we're about to cut." "And you're certain this will work?" Lisa looked at the massive display showing the entire operational theater. Every Velcron ship, every supply convoy, every communication, every resource. She had spent 3 years planning for this exact scenario. "Admiral, the Velcron have already lost this war. They just don't know it yet." The Galactic Council met in emergency session on the neutral world of Axis Prime. Representatives from 43 different species filled the Grand Chamber, all talking at once. The noise was overwhelming. Chancellor Drex, a tall Venlari with blue skin and 4 arms, called for order. "Please, honored delegates, we must have calm. We are here to discuss the Velcron invasion of human space." "There is nothing to discuss," said the Velcron ambassador, a stern military officer named Krell. "This is a matter between the Velcron Dominion and the human government. It does not concern the Council. It concerns us all," replied Ambassador Kate Sullivan, the human representative. She was a woman in her 50s, with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. "The Velcron invaded our space without provocation, without warning, without any diplomatic attempt to resolve whatever grievances they may have had." Krell's face showed anger. "Your species has been a threat to galactic peace for 200 years. You are violent, unpredictable, dangerous. We are simply protecting ourselves and our allies." Kate smiled slightly. "Protecting yourselves? By invading our territory? By occupying our colonies? That's an interesting definition of self-defense." The debate continued for hours. Most species were privately pleased that someone was finally standing up to humanity. The humans had been too powerful, too intimidating for too long. If the Velcron could put them in their place, Maybe the galaxy would be safer for everyone. But some delegates were worried. The Krellian ambassador stood and spoke. I do not love humanity. Few of us do. But I am troubled by the ease of this invasion. The humans have always fought fiercely. Why are they retreating so quickly? Because they are losing, Krell said confidently. Because for all their reputation, they are actually weak. Kate didn't respond to that. She simply sat calmly, watching and listening. After the session ended, she returned to her private office and opened a secure communication channel to Earth. Admiral Palmer's face appeared on the screen. How did it go? As expected, most of the galaxy is happy to see us humbled. The Velcron are arrogant. They think they've already won. Good. That's exactly what we want them to think. Kate leaned back in her chair. Admiral, I've been doing this job for a long time. I've represented humanity in hundreds of negotiations. But I've never been part of anything like this. Are you sure about this plan? I'm not the one who came up with the plan. That was Colonel Bennett and her team. But yes, I'm sure. Trust the process, Kate. I do. I just hope the people in the occupied colonies can hold on a little longer. Palmer's expression became serious. So do I. At Deep Site 7, Lisa Bennett was preparing for the next phase. She stood in front of her entire team and began to speak. We've completed Phase 1 successfully. The Velcron think they're winning. Their military is overextended across occupied territory. Their supply lines are stretched thin. Their communications are compromised. Their economy is under stress. Their commanders don't trust each other. They're exactly where we want them. She pressed a button and a new display appeared, showing complex patterns of movement and timing. Phase 2 begins tomorrow. This is where we stop looking weak and start applying pressure. Not military pressure. Not yet. But economic, diplomatic, and psychological pressure that will make continuing this war impossible. Nathan Cole spoke up. What about the communications interference? Do we increase it? No. Keep it at current levels. We don't want them to realize we're doing it. But I need you to do something else. I need you to make their internal security communications unreliable. Make it so that when commanders try to report suspicious activity, their messages get delayed or corrupted. Make them paranoid. I can do that. Lisa turned to Claire Martinez. Claire, I need you to trigger the economic collapse. All the pieces are in place. Execute the plan. Claire nodded. Understood. It's going to be dramatic. That's the point. The next day, the Velcron economy began to collapse. It started small. A few banks reported unexpected losses. Some trading companies announced they were canceling contracts with Velcron businesses. Fuel prices suddenly jumped by 70%. Food prices doubled again. Within 48 hours, it became a crisis. The Velcron government had borrowed heavily to finance the war, expecting a quick victory that would bring new resources and territory. But the war was taking longer than expected and costing far more than planned. And now their economy was falling apart. High Commander Zalth received an urgent message from the Velcron homeworld. The government was demanding answers. Why was the war costing so much? Why were supplies so expensive? Why was victory taking so long? Zalth had no good answers. Everything should have been working perfectly. But somehow, nothing was going according to plan. At the same time, Ambassador Kate Sullivan was busy on Axis Prime. She met privately with delegates from small, peaceful species who had always been nervous about powerful military empires. The Velcron invaded us without cause, Kate said to a group of 5 ambassadors. Today it's humanity. Tomorrow it could be any of you. Do you really want to live in a galaxy where the strong can attack the weak whenever they feel like it? But the Velcron are powerful, said one ambassador nervously. What can we do? You can speak out. You can vote for sanctions. You can make it clear that the galaxy will not accept this behavior. You don't have to fight. You just have to refuse to cooperate. Slowly, carefully, Kate built a coalition. Species that had never cared about humanity began to care about the principle. If the Velcron could invade human space so easily, what would stop them from invading anyone else? Within a week, 12 species had voted to impose economic sanctions on the Velcron Dominion. It wasn't enough to cripple them, but it was enough to make things harder. Trade became more difficult. Diplomatic relations cooled. The Velcron found themselves increasingly isolated. High Commander Zalth couldn't understand what was happening. The military campaign was successful. His forces controlled 12 human colonies. Human military forces had been pushed back to their core systems. By every military measure, the Velcron were winning. But somehow, the war felt like it was slipping away from him. He called a meeting with his senior commanders. Something is wrong. I can feel it. The humans are planning something. What could they be planning? Asked one commander. Their military is in retreat. They've lost a third of their territory. I don't know. But nothing is working the way it should. Our supplies are always late. Our communications are unreliable. Our economy is collapsing. It's as if someone is working against us, but I can't see how. Another commander spoke up. Perhaps we should consider negotiating. We've taken enough territory to claim victory. We could offer peace terms. Zalth considered this. Part of him wanted to keep fighting, to crush humanity completely. But another part of him, the practical part, knew that this war was becoming unsustainable. Contact the human government. Tell them we are willing to discuss terms. At Deep Site 7, Lisa Bennett received the news and smiled. They're ready to negotiate. Perfect. Phase 3 begins now. She opened a channel to Admiral Palmer. Admiral, the Velcron are asking for peace talks. I recommend we refuse. Palmer looked surprised. Refuse? Why? Because we're not done yet. They think negotiating is a way out. I want them to realize there is no way out. I want them to understand that they've already lost everything that matters. Then, when they're truly desperate, we'll talk. That's risky. If we push them too hard, they might do something desperate. They won't. I've analyzed their psychology, their culture, their decision-making patterns. They're not a species that accepts glorious defeat. They're practical. When they realize the cost of continuing is too high, they'll surrender. But we need to make sure they understand just how high that cost is. Palmer was quiet for a moment. You're asking me to let our people suffer under occupation for longer than necessary. I'm asking you to trust the plan. If we negotiate now, the Velcron will see it as a victory. But if we break them completely, if we make them understand that attacking humanity was the worst mistake they ever made, then we'll have real peace. Lasting peace. Palmer closed his eyes and made the hardest decision of his career. Do it your way, Colonel. But you better be right. The Velcron offer of peace talks was rejected by the human government. The official statement was brief and cold. Humanity would consider negotiations only after all Velcron forces had withdrawn from human territory. Krell, the Velcron ambassador, was furious when he heard the news. The humans are insane. We are offering them peace. And they refuse? Do they want their colonies to remain occupied forever? But Kate Sullivan just smiled. We don't negotiate from a position of weakness, and despite appearances, we are not weak. That night, as Krell returned to his quarters, he found a data package waiting for him. It had been delivered anonymously. Inside was a detailed analysis of the Velcron economy, showing exactly how bad things had become. It showed the manipulation of markets, the rising costs, the failing war bonds, the collapsing trade relationships, and it showed who was responsible. Not some random market forces, not bad luck, but deliberate, calculated sabotage by human strategic planners. Krell read the entire document twice. Then, he sat in silence for a long time, finally understanding what the humans had been doing, while the Velcron military was celebrating its victories. The humans hadn't been running away. They had been setting a trap, and the Velcron had walked right into it. 3 weeks after the rejected peace offer, the Velcron Dominion was in chaos. The economy was in free fall. The government was facing riots on the home world. Military commanders were openly questioning their orders. The war that was supposed to be over in 2 months had dragged on for 5, and there was no end in sight. High Commander Zalth sat alone in his quarters, reading reports that made no sense. His supply lines were collapsing. Convoys were getting lost, delayed, or simply disappearing. Communication with his fleet was becoming increasingly difficult. And strangest of all, his own officers were reporting each other for suspicious behavior. The entire command structure was eating itself alive with paranoia. He finally understood what had happened. The humans had never really been fighting a military war. They had been fighting a completely different kind of war, one that the Velcron weren't prepared for. Someone knocked on his door. It was his intelligence officer, looking exhausted. "Sir, you need to see this." The officer handed him a data pad. It contained a detailed breakdown of everything the humans had done. The communication interference, the economic manipulation, the psychological warfare, the diplomatic isolation. Every single operation, laid out in perfect detail. "Where did you get this?" Zalth asked. "It was sent to me anonymously." "But sir, I've verified the information. It's all true. The humans have been systematically destroying our ability to wage war without firing a shot." Zalth felt something he hadn't felt in decades. Fear. At Deep Site 7, Lisa Bennett was giving a presentation to the Galactic Council via remote video link. It was the first time anyone outside of Earth's military command had seen inside the facility. "What you're looking at," Lisa said calmly, "is the Strategic Planning Division. Our purpose is simple: to ensure humanity's survival in a hostile galaxy through superior planning and strategy." The council chamber was silent. Delegates from dozens of species watched in shock as Lisa explained exactly what her team had done to the Velcron. "We didn't win through superior firepower," she continued. "We won through superior thinking. While the Velcron were focused on military victories, we were dismantling every system that made those victories meaningful. We made it impossible for them to sustain their war effort. We made it politically toxic for them to continue. We made it economically devastating to pursue victory." Chancellor Drex spoke up, his voice shaky. "You destroyed an empire without fighting a real battle?" "We didn't destroy their empire. We just made continuing the war more costly than they could bear. The Velcron Dominion still exists. Their fleet is still largely intact. But they have no ability to sustain offensive operations. They have no political will to continue. They have no economic resources to replace their losses. They have no allies willing to support them. They're done." Kate Sullivan stood beside Lisa's holographic image. "The Galactic Council has been worried about humanity for 200 years because we're good at fighting. You should have been worried because we're even better at thinking." The Krellian ambassador stood, his expression one of horror and respect. "You've changed warfare itself. How can anyone defend against this kind of attack?" Lisa smiled slightly. "That's the point. You can't. Not easily. Traditional military thinking focuses on ships, weapons, and territory. But wars are about resources, information, politics, economics, and psychology. If you control those things, the ships and weapons don't matter." "This is terrifying," another delegate whispered. "Yes," Kate agreed. "It is. But here's what you need to understand. Humanity developed this capability because we had to. We're small. We're outnumbered. We can't win traditional wars against empires like the Velcron. So we learned to win different kinds of wars. Wars that favor intelligence over strength." Lisa's image leaned forward. "And now every species in this galaxy needs to ask themselves a question. Do you want to be our enemy? Because if you do, You won't face our military. You'll face us. And we've just shown you what that means. The silence in the council chamber was absolute. High Commander Zalth received the order to withdraw from human territory. The Velkron government had voted to end the war. They had no choice. The economic damage was too severe. The political pressure was too intense. The military costs were too high. He gathered his fleet and began the long journey home. As his ships passed by Commander Jake Morrison's patrol fleet, Jake watched them go. Sophie stood beside him on the bridge. "We never fired a shot," she said quietly. "No, we didn't," Jake agreed. "But we still won." "Jake. How? I still don't understand how we won." Jake pulled up a message he had received from Admiral Palmer that morning. It contained a brief summary of what the Strategic Planning Division had accomplished. As Sophie read it, her eyes grew wider. "This is real? They really did all this?" "Yes. While we were out here following orders, we didn't understand. They were fighting the real war. And they won it. Completely." Sophie sat down slowly. "The galaxy is going to lose its mind when they find out about this. The galaxy already knows. Colonel Bennett briefed the Galactic Council this morning. By now, everyone knows. What happens next? That depends on how smart everyone else is." In the weeks that followed, the galaxy watched as the Velkron Dominion began to fracture. The economic damage had been too severe. Different regions started to break away, forming independent governments. The central authority that had held the empire together for centuries was gone. But the humans didn't take advantage of the chaos. They didn't invade. They didn't seize territory. Instead, human diplomatic teams, led by Aaron Cross and Megan Cole, helped negotiate peaceful transitions. They ensured that the new governments were stable and non-threatening. "Why are we helping them?" one of the new regional leaders asked Aaron. "We invaded you. We occupied your colonies. Why help us now?" Aaron's answer was simple. "Because we don't want to rule the galaxy. We just want to be left alone. And the best way to ensure that is to make sure our neighbors are stable and prosperous. Stable governments don't start wars. They have too much to lose." The Galactic Council held another session, this time to discuss new protocols for dealing with humanity. Kate Sullivan sat calmly as various species proposed everything from trade restrictions to military alliances. Finally, she stood to speak. "I want to make something very clear. Humanity doesn't want to be your enemy. We never did. We developed our military capabilities because we had to survive. We developed our strategic capabilities because traditional military power wasn't enough. But we don't use these capabilities to conquer or dominate. We use them to protect ourselves." "How can we trust that?" asked one delegate. "Look at what we did to the Velkron. We could have destroyed them completely. We could have taken over their territory. We could have enslaved their population. But we didn't. We just made them stop attacking us. That's all we've ever wanted, to be left alone." Kate paused, looking around the chamber. "But here's what you need to understand. Every species in this galaxy now has a choice. You can work with us, trade with us, negotiate with us like equals. Or you can threaten us. And if you threaten us, you won't face our soldiers. You'll face our strategists. You'll face people like Colonel Lisa Bennett, who can dismantle your entire civilization without firing a shot." The message was clear. Humanity wasn't asking for dominance. They were offering partnership. But the alternative was something far worse than military defeat. Commander Jake Morrison received orders to return to Earth for the first time in 18 months. When his ship entered orbit, he was surprised to see hundreds of vessels from dozens of different species. They weren't military ships. They were diplomatic vessels, trade ships, and cultural exchange missions. "What's going on?" Sophie asked. "I think," Jake said slowly, "everyone is trying to be humanity's friend now." He was right. The display of strategic power had accomplished something that centuries of military victories never had. It had made humanity too dangerous to threaten and too valuable to ignore. At Deep Site 7, Lisa Bennett stood with her team and watched the diplomatic traffic around Earth on their displays. Admiral Palmer was there too, having come to personally thank them. "You did it," he said. "You saved humanity without firing the shots that would have cost us everything." "We just played the game better than anyone else," Lisa replied. "But the game isn't over. It never is. There will always be new threats, new challenges, new problems to solve." "What's next for the Strategic Planning Division?" Lisa smiled. "We keep planning. We keep thinking. We keep making sure that humanity stays 3 steps ahead of everyone else. Because that's what keeps us safe. Not weapons, not soldiers, not ships. Planning, strategy, intelligence. Those are our real weapons." Palmer nodded and looked around at the people working at their consoles. Young men and women with brilliant minds, working in secret to protect their species. No glory, no recognition, no medals or monuments. "The galaxy knows about you now," he said. "Yes," Lisa agreed. "And that's perfect. Let them know. Let them understand that behind every human ship, every human diplomat, every human trader, there's us. There's this facility, and dozens of others like it, full of people whose job is to think of every possible threat and plan 17 moves ahead." She turned to look at Palmer. "For 200 years, the galaxy feared human warriors. Now they fear human strategists. And that fear will keep us safer than any weapon ever could." Commander Jake Morrison stood on the surface of Earth for the first time in years, looking up at the stars. His old friend, Nathan Cole, now revealed as one of the key members of the Strategic Planning Division, stood beside him. "Did you ever think we'd win like this?" Jake asked. Nathan shook his head. "I always knew we could win. I just had to make everyone else think they were winning. Until it was too late. It's a strange kind of war. It's the only kind of war that really matters. Ships and guns are just tools. The real battle is always in here." Nathan tapped his head. "And humanity has always been good at thinking our way out of impossible situations." Jake looked at his friend with new respect. "The galaxy thinks we're terrifying now." "Good," Nathan said simply. "Fear keeps people honest, and honest people don't start wars they can't win." Above them, the stars shone bright, and somewhere out there, the galaxy was learning a new lesson. Humanity's warriors were fearsome, but humanity's strategists were unstoppable, and that made all the difference.